Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Vinny Eastwood Show, the lighter side of genocide. Just because you're being exterminated doesn't mean you can't make it fun. Otherwise, what's the point of being killed? The Vinny Eastwood Show, where the only thing worse than living in a high-tech global police state is Vinny's jokes. And my very special guest joining me today is Chris Newman, and I just got his number this morning off of Michael States, the kind of like the secretary of the NCPP. I'm not sure exactly what he is, but in either case, he gave me his number, and now he's on the show at extremely short notice, and I am extraordinarily grateful. So, Chris, without, as they say in Israel, further ado, why don't you give us a little bit of background on who you are and what it is you do?
Let's just talk about the, what we'll call it the New Zealand Public Party movement in New Zealand across the land. It's one of the most positive things that we free speech advocates have seen for a long time. Finally, shall we say, the deeper thoughts and some of the fears, but also the considerations of the people are surfacing. And Billy Tikahika and his team are giving them voice in a way that we haven't heard for such a long time. And because I've been involved in the free speech movement out there in Queen Street with the mic, giving it to the people about how we've got to stand up for a free speech and practice it, suddenly we're finding that is resonating across the land, and many people are stepping up with Billy TK and saying, hey, why don't we start talking about a lot of the issues that have been swept under the carpet for a long time in New Zealand? What's this? Why are we getting tangled up with the United Nations? That's a really interesting conversation. What's going on with the 1080 in the backcountry? What's the issue about our economy being linked in so closely with the CCP, the Communist Chinese Party? These sort of topics, which are fascinating just in themselves, but which have a big bearing on the life of lots of Kiwis, are finally coming to the surface. Someone's got the guts to talk about it. Now, we know that there are other people who are really good quality folk over the Vision Party. Hana Tamaki and her group are talking about these matters and bringing them up. I understand the New Conservatives are having a bit of a go at it. It looks like finally shall we call it the cottage industry, Vinny, of free speech in New Zealand is starting to show its handsome face. And at the front of it, you see the lovely visage of Billy TK and his team behind him, building a really good team in there. And so all of us free speech people stand up and give them a round of applause. And I've been fortunate to learn a bit about direct democracy, which is the Swiss system of democratizing democracy. Get that? Democratizing democracy, Vinny. Brilliant idea. And that means localism over centralism and state diktat. So I'm worried about you, Vinny, getting genocided, but there's hope at hand. We're rising up, all the free speech guys and girls and Billy TK and a whole bunch of other good folk. And we want you to have your precious neck saved, Vinny, and all those others like you who dare to be different, who dare to express what others are afraid to talk about. And why are they afraid? Political correctness. Political correctness. Always the same old cultural Marxism, fun-hating, miserable, dyed in the wool. Karl Marx is their holy, holy prophet, the perfect man, an ugly man, actually, a horrible person. But he's their spiritual guru, and he's guiding so many people, and the net result of it is misery. And then along comes someone like Billy TK, and look, he's really good on the guitar. I want everybody to know that. He's not only is he good at speaking, but he knows about music. And that is all about tuning up. And I think a good musician, their ear is sensitive to the truth. And they don't like the old BS. And I think Billy's talking he's in tune, shall we say. He's got all the strings tuned up. And the song that he's playing for us is a song of freedom. And lots of people are saying, why not? Why not? And then, Vinny, they're all saying, well, but all the small parties should unite, That sounds a little Marxist to me. I'm just careful about everybody, because the whole idea of direct democracy, and I'm going to quote Mao Zedong here, Let 100 flowers bloom, he said. Of course, he only said that so he could cut their heads off. But if you look at the Swiss example of direct democracy, Vinny, they've got 16 parties in their government, in the parliament. Now, the people own the parliament, not the parties. And that's, you see, that it's the difference between the tail wagging the dog and the dog wagging the tail, right? So it's our parliament, our taxes, we want it back. And right now, these stinking political parties in New Zealand, and most of them are real stinkers, you know that, the mainstream guys. Should we talk about their 4 names? The Labour, National, New Zealand First, sometimes known as Winston First, and the Greens. Those particularly have all been spoiling our fun, trading off all the assets and whatever else. And it looks to a lot of people that they've just been short-changed. But I have to ask everybody, who did you vote for last election? Because you must have voted for one of those parties, most of you. Maybe it's a bad habit. So let's give Billy and Vision Party, New Conservatives, you know, all these other outdoor party, hey, give them a bit of oxygen. Let them stand up and work together. Anyway, how's that, Vinny, for a warm-up?
That's nice. Now, I was recalling, I've said this on the show a number of times, that there's many people within this, you say, free speech cottage industry.
Yeah.
And they have this idea that they want to be free, right? They want to speak freely, but they can't actually accomplish it because that takes skill, it takes coordination, it takes financing, it takes all of these things more than speaking in and of itself. And I believe that what's happened, and I've been trying my best, but I've been getting ignored, to tell people how to promote themselves at the very minimum by learning how to live stream yourself. Okay, that's at the bare minimum. If you're in a political party, you need to know how to live stream to Facebook. Bare minimum, all right? Otherwise, shush, you're wasting everybody's time. Go away. All right, and that's the end of the day, the story. These people are fighting with muskets, and they need nuclear weapons, ladies and gentlemen, if you're going to destroy this kind of media monopoly to a large degree. So, you know, every single tool in the tool belt, whether you know how to use a keyboard and a mouse and a computer in a live stream, or whether you know how to use a mobile phone, get that stuff working and use it as your weapons, use it as your ammunition, and ladies and gentlemen, I guarantee you, you will be able to kill the enemy. The enemy, in this case, being bad ideas.
Right on, Vinny. It's when you mention the toolkit, there's a bit of a spectrum here. On one end, you've got the good old keyboard, right? And on the other end, you've got the direct face-to-face, you know, we meet for a cup of coffee down at the iPress Cafe and we have a little chat and we get to know each other and we're interacting. There's this whole spectrum. And some of us are better suited at one end and some of us are good at the other and some of us can cover the whole lot. We can write, we can speak and all those things. But at the heart of it, we've got to hold hands. We've got to hold hands. We've got to express to each other our shared humanity. And then with that focus, you start to mobilize, as you say, all these talents and abilities through the channels of communication. Yes, you learn how to do the live streaming if that's your thing. But we also need some public speakers. We also need people to do leaflets, flyers in the letterboxes. Some people have got to write the scripts. So it's such a wonderful opportunity for everybody to, how should we say?
Contribute.
Invest their talents, you know, bring their talents up.
If I may, the word is collaborate.
Collaborate. There you go.
Because look at major films, for example. You have 10 to 20,000 people working on a singular film with a single vision. And the way that they do that is everybody collaborates. There's no one dictator telling everybody what they can and can't do. Everybody gets in their ideas. They all mix them around a little bit, and they eventually come away with the result. And what I was meant to say before, but I messed up a little bit, was that a lot of people are confused as to why people won't join our movement, right? And you said before because you get shut down because of the PC gone mad, that kind of thing. And my personal experience has been, I think in the last year, I lost my last friend that I didn't gain in this movement. All right, like my last connection to the outside world, the last friend that I had that didn't follow their conscience more than their pocket. I am no longer friends with anybody like that. Now, it took a long time for that to happen. And so that's the reason why people don't want to join this movement, right? You got no friends, you got no money, you got no respect. Why people aren't joining, it's unbelievable. And then you look at the other side, what are you offering? Oh, well, we're offering you millions of dollars, we're offering you nice places to live, we're offering you really beautiful chicks to shag, we're offering you lots of accolades and awards and things of that nature. All you have to do is sell your fellow man out.
Isn't that amazing? So, integrity, collaboration, but also real, clean, happy fun. Being able to sleep at night and not have irritable bowel syndrome anymore. Being able to look yourself in the face and think, yeah, I am a free man. And remember that line from, was it Pink Floyd, to rather have a lead role in a cage or a walk-on part in the war? So you got the lead role in the cage, right? And the cage is there. It's very interesting. You could call it a labyrinth. There's all kinds of ways of talking about that. And but on the other side, you meet quirky people like Vinny, and they won't bite you. They're fun. Not only that, they might have actually made some effort to find out a little bit about if there's green grass on the other side, what it's like over there. They might have read a few books. Here's a few books behind me. They might have been somewhere and done something with their life and have something to share with you. Or they may be interested to hear your stories and what you think. This is much more fun. It's much more engaging, and it's more family friendly too.
Well, now it is. I mean, my bandmates told me, "Hey, Vinny, you're grating on us a little bit," and I was like, "Okay, let's reel back the Vinny Eastwood a little bit here." And we were talking before the show about my new baby Alina, and I think my bandmate asked me, or somebody asked me, I was thinking like, how hard is it, Vinny? Is it really difficult or something like that? And I was like, just before having my baby, I started to get bored with movies. I started to get bored with computer games. This is something I spent a lot of my time doing to distract myself from the fact that I wasn't doing things I should be doing. Okay? And a lot of other people do that. And then when you have a baby, I was like, okay, let's delete all the games off my machine. Just did it in one day. Just gone. Haven't played a single game since. And haven't been doing anything except really taking care of my baby, that kind of thing. And it's what have I lost? What have I lost now? I have lost the ability to distract myself and accomplish nothing. That is the only thing that having a baby has cost me.
Vinny, that's amazing. It's also a little bit like the old, when you see those big rockets leave Cape Canaveral and they're going up to space, and they drop off stage one. You can't take that any further. You got to go to the next. If you want to really go up and explore the universe, you use your booster. That's the first stage, and then the next stage, and then you're off. So how can you possibly continue adolescence through it? You start to lose a bit of dignity after a while, because adolescence and young things are for young people. And that's wonderful. But then the next thing that happens is the next stage in life, and the next stage. And if you don't grow your heart, you end up just stuck as a kind of a mutant dwarf.
Well, it was called the pure eterna, all right, or the eternal youth, the person who never grows up, the man child.
The man child, or the girl woman, yeah. So, but Vinny, I'm picking up listening to you. I think when you were born, the rattle that you held and you shook as a baby was a direct democracy one. I can see that when you talked about all the different characters and all the different possibilities and so on, this is direct democracy, because direct democracy is people power. Marxists thought they had people power. That's thieving us and tricking us and deceiving us. The true people power is liberating. It's got kids there. It's got grandparents. In fact, if you look at a very interesting example is the Tamaki family. They're at 5 generations, I believe, all working together. So that's much more ideal, that we're all linked up with all the different aspects of the human soul and spirit, or character, or talent, you know, and experience. Much more fun than being boring members of a workers' party or endless youths playing endless video games, or poor people stuck in rooms with pornography, or, you know, just it's sad that the dead end streets that people can find themselves in,
There's one
where
thing.
there's so many possibilities.
One thing to add on to that is the current phenomenon that's called full nest syndrome. Now, this is an interesting element for those of you who are young and want to go out to university, and bear in mind that's about 0.2% of the demographics that listen to this show. You have to actually be around for a little while before you figure out what's happening and then come over and listen to this show about things, because then now you can deal with it. But what was I saying there? Oh man, I totally.
The full nest syndrome. The full nest syndrome. I mean,
full nest. Here we go. So you go to university, all right, but you're a child, right? You're sitting at home, you're playing video games until you finish high school, and then you go to university. You finish your university, you've got a huge amount of debt, you can't get a job, so you move back in with mum and dad, and you sit and you go back into your old room, and you continue playing video games. But now you've got a mountain of debt and no skills to have for you. That's Marxist university, ladies and gentlemen. Full nest syndrome. Isn't that great?
Oh, Lord. But, Vinny, then we watch the nature program documentaries, and we see that eventually they kick the birds out of the parents have to kick the birds out of the nest, or the lions have to send the little cubs, well, they're big cubs now, out to go and fend for themselves. Sooner or later, there has to be a bit of a shove, doesn't there? Because if you believe in evolutionary theory, we only evolve by going through the stages of development. We can't, otherwise you got, arrested development. You know, that's like stagnating, isn't it? That's like the pot with the roots, the little plant's pot bound. You know, its roots are all stuck in there. You got to take it out and stick it in the garden so that it can actually start now to grow out into the full size and reveal its character. But the full nest sounds like the thing's getting a bit root bound. The roots are getting bound up in the pot there. Time for a little bit of gardening.
That's right. Now, the reason for this syndrome essentially is an over-attachment to the mother. Now, don't get me wrong, ladies and gentlemen, attachment to the mother is absolutely essential for life. Over-attachment to the mother, on the other hand, that's something different. So this is how it works. You come into this world, you're completely vulnerable, you need your mother there to protect you, okay? And the mother needs the father there to protect her. But once the child gets old enough to fend for itself, that is when the father comes in and shows him, gives him guidance, and then allows him to go out into the dangerous world by himself, where he's not protected anymore because he's grown up.
Yeah, that's right. So this is a very interesting, and it's a very productive part, because everything in the world is not just, how should we say, easy peasy. There's actually a dimension of challenge there. And if there wasn't, there wouldn't be such things as hills. Because a hill is all about a challenge. And if you remember, anybody who's hiked up a big hill remembers, you go part of the way and you think that's it. And you get there and you suddenly find that was just a knob on a ridge. Oh, there's a bit more. You hike up there. You thought you were at the summit. There's a bit more yet. You got to keep going, because it might be quite a tall hill. Or even climbing a tree. You know, all these things have got a little challenge component, and children love a challenge. Little kids are busy trying to walk, busy trying to do all kinds of things. And what happens is that process is meant to keep going, and then as we develop, as you are now, into your family, you start to branch out. You know, you start to be big enough for little ones to grow under your branches, because you've got a bit of protection there. It's a wonderful thing. And running away from it and pretending it's not real is a tragedy. And look at this miserable. I'm going to go back to that miserable Karl Marx. He had children, but he didn't parent them. And one of his kids sadly took its own life. But he was very anti-family, even though he had a family. And that's the whole sad thing about these characters who get into positions of power and who aren't family-based people. Their ethics go up to pot, you know. And that's what I like about the direct democracy movement and the what we call now the public party here, and Vision and New Conservative. These people are all family. You go there and meet them, there's actually family people around you, not just guys playing video games with what do you call it? Student debt. Oh.
Full nest syndrome, yeah, and student debt, yeah.
But the student debt, Vinny, wouldn't you say that that's part of the attempt to make everybody a servant of the state?
I have student debt. My wife has student debt, and I only just recognised this and kind of like just right in my face, like there's a number very recently. So I'm like, okay, I need X amount of tens of thousands of dollars to pay off my wife's student debt, but I need less than $10,000 to pay off mine. You know, that kind of thing. So we're looking at about $42,000 in debt between my wife and I. Hers is 35, mine is 8, or mine is less. So it's like, okay, that's a huge amount of money. And the reason why it appears like such a huge amount of money to me is I just got finished paying off a $2,000 overdraft, a $3,000 credit card, and that took me like a decade's work. Now, I'm in my mid-30s now. Now, apparently during your 20s, this is when you have your good ideas. Your 30s is when you really start to establish yourself and make some money, and the 40s is when you essentially start to taper off and you sort of become a little bit more buoyant under your own steam. And so I'm hoping that I can get out of debt, but I don't know if I will be able to. I'm hoping that I'll be able to purchase a home for my wife and my child to live that's clean and comfortable, but I don't know if I will. And I think the reason for that is not necessarily because I ain't working hard enough. It's because fractional reserve banking exists.
I wondered where you were going with that, Vinny. So we need to have a little head scratch here, don't we? Because suddenly we realise, for example, my generation, we grew up and our fathers were able to support a mortgage and a family and a good Kiwi lifestyle on one income on a 40-hour week, and occasionally there'd be a bit of overtime, and the overtime would pay for a few extras. Now, the whole basis has been shifted. The whole basis of that economy has been shifted away from the traditional Kiwi way of life into this globalist oriented racket. And you're pointing it out. The fundamentals under it, the economic fundamentals are being distorted. And again, we go back to Public Party, Direct Democracy, Vision Party. All these groups are expressing people's feeling and concerns that our economy has been stolen from us, and the political guys down in Wellington have actually spent decades carefully doing this and playing games against our best interests and in their best interests with the international cartel. And if you don't believe that, there was a Prime Minister in New Zealand who came directly from a career in Wall Street.
John King. Yeah.
Oh, is that the one? Okay. I just heard we had one from Wall Street.
I loved it when he stood down in the middle of his term and he says, and I was like, oh, there's no conspiracy about me stepping down or anything like that. And I go, okay, Jewish Freemason banker steps down with no real reason for doing so, claims there's no conspiracy afoot. Okay.
There you go. I love you. You got to connect the dots. Remember, one of the key things about being a kid and growing up is learning to connect the dots in those pictures. Now, that's interesting. And you connect the dots and you make an Indian teepee or something, or there's a lion in Africa. Who knows? And as we grow up, we start to connect the dots in the games that are going on around us. And I'm just connecting the dots on that banking game. And Billy TK has been bringing that up in the public meetings that people have been attending, talking about this, that, what's going on with our economy. Who owns our economy, for goodness sake, people? Well, there's been we think there's been a quiet bit of collusion out the back with some of these characters, their international dealings, wheelings and dealings and credit and money. And how come we're all in debt? How come there's this huge credit system going on? How is it that there's billions of dollars sloshing through New Zealand's economy with it nobody knowing, just because we happen to be the first up every morning and it's time to run the money through the Kiwi economy, and we're going to have to, launder certain billions of dollars in or whatever. So this is a fascinating situation, but we were never invited. It was done without our involvement, and yet it's our economy. So, Vinny, we want to get the whole thing back on, shall we say, four square. It's like the whole house is tilting over one way or the other. It's out of balance. We want to get it squared up so that guys like you with raising a young family have got a chance to make a decent income and get that house. But one key factor that people haven't figured out is if we keep flooding New Zealand with immigrants from countries that don't match with us and in numbers that are far too great, we're going to keep overloading the system, and we can't build up our natural ability and reserves and competencies in this nation, because we're forever being overwhelmed, and our infrastructure is having to be constantly upgraded or expanded to meet this huge burden that's being imposed on it. And who's paying for it? You know, it's coming out of the working generation. The working generation is subsidizing all these extreme social experiments. And it's just, it doesn't seem a fair thing. You were never asked if you wanted to have to put the next years of your life paying off these huge debts incurred with all these expensive projects that are being brought in. I mean,
for that matter, I was never asked to have a birth certificate with a tracking number at the Securities and Exchange Commission that the government can bargain and borrow money and then leave me and all my generation with the debt.
Vinny, you've been doing your homework, man.
I've been doing my suffering.
Yeah.
But,
hey, we got to rise up. This is a shall we call it a very balanced people's revolution. What it means is that you could call it a counter-revolution, where we are going to take the whole thing back. And this is where we've got to admire guys like you, Billy TK, and all the other free thinkers and free spirits who've been struggling for years, but now we're starting to link up and hold hands. And part of the reason is because there's a dire emergency being imposed on us from the overseas rackets, shall we say, that were carefully worked out long ago. And this whole birth certificate and things that you talked about links in with an international money scheme that's very cleverly being constructed by Wall Street characters. And we won't talk about any Wall Street characters that we've had in New Zealand who might have been in positions where they could open up the books and let their friends in and do all the adjustments to them that needed to be done to link us in with the main vein of a very, shall we say, very exploitative system. We won't talk about that at all. We won't talk about that, Vinny.
Yeah.
Because everybody else is.
Well, that's the good thing about direct democracy, that kind of thing, and digital participation in democracy is something that people fear because, of course, you know, if you've got electronic voting machines and things like that, we all know that stuff can be rigged. But now at the moment we have, say, for example, IRD, who have secure IR, and you can sign in to the tax department and send them secure emails. Why the hell can't you vote securely on legislation or referendums digitally?
Isn't that interesting, again, connecting the dots? So in the direct democracy, by the way, I'm going to link that to something else. You know, the politicians, the political professionals, shall we say, they don't want direct democracy because they say that we're not qualified, you and me, Vinny, and the irregular, everybody listening, we're not qualified to have any decisions about, you know, expert things like politics or whatever that is, or our own affairs, but we are qualified to vote for them. So if I'm qualified to vote for candidate X and he thinks he's wonderful, I'm also qualified not to vote for him or to vote for something else. And that's what the direct democracy means, that I have an ongoing mandate, an ongoing vote, and you do too, and we all do, to keep this ship on course. Now that then starts to work in all kinds of ways. So if we can keep our tax department lined up so they can hook into our veins and suck our juice out, and make sure that that's you know, really kept steady. Surely we can do that with other little decisions that have to be made, like, you know, whether or not we're going to bring in another 70,000 people who don't fit in here because the house is already crowded, or whether or not we're going to join up with the Communist Chinese Party and open our economy fully to them like a big, intimate, open-mouth kiss. I'm not very happy kissing Chairman Xi. I find him to be repulsive. Sorry, but he's a horrible sort of person. He apparently
makes my Wuhan shrivel up.
Let's not go there, Vinny. That's getting me nervous.
Sorry.
If you're not careful, he's going to take your Wuhan off you and sell it on the organ market to somebody else.
And I'll be like sitting there, no, my Wuhan.
Yeah, those guys have been running all kinds of rackets. and now they're running them in New Zealand. And we used to have a pretty clean country in many ways, and now we're inviting all these characters in here to run their rackets. That's what they tell me. That's what my contacts tell me.
You're right.
And this is very disturbing because why should people be allowed to do these things here when we're not allowed to do them either here or over at their place? But they're allowed to do it in their place and come here and do the same thing. And there's all kinds of rackets. I won't go into it right now, but we could do a separate show just talking about those sort of little adventures. But yeah, I'm concerned that they've got your number and my number, and we're being used for collateral, you might say, in the international economy. Isn't that interesting?
Now, a couple of things to explain to the audience here. I mean, I was coming with a Māori elder who's part of the Kingitanga, you know, like the actual royal bloodline, and we're driving down to Tikawiti, to the Temple of the Four Winds. And as we were going along there, we passed all these cows and stuff like that, and motueka or whatever. And there were cows literally walking through streams and pissing in them and crapping in them, that kind of thing. And this old fellow who's driving the car, you know, he's in his 80s, and he says, "Yeah, we never used to allow that back in the day. They had to be the cows had to be kept 50 meters from the water during the day, and 150 meters from the water at night. That was why we had, past tense, had clean waterways in this country." But no longer, because of the amount of extra land use and intensification that's been going on. And I think the word kaitiakitanga, all right, which means stewardship, guardianship, more or less, that was an intimate part of culture once upon a time. It no longer is not part of culture in any way.
Yeah, it's also known as the tragedy of the commons. This was so integral with our, original Anglo roots, and the idea of having fallow land, fallow, Fallow, which means land that was left to rest, and of lightly stocking and of balanced rotations, and all these things was integral with our whole economy and ecology as the Anglo system was imposed on the land of New Zealand. And it took a while and an adjustments, and they started to get it right. But yeah, this continuing pushing of the margins to squeeze more and more. So when I was a younger fellow, I worked on a dairy farm, and we had, I think, 120 cows. And there was one family plus me as a worker plus a few local things, and that was adequate. But now, to do the same thing, you'd be running 400 animals on the same area of land, and you'd be driving everything to the margins. And it's just crazy. And that comes, of course, with all these things, bringing in more and more people and running the system and running these massive debts up, and you've got to squeeze more and more money out of the existing operation. What's happening at the sea, in the ocean? I used to work in the seafood business, dredging, all the living things out of the sea, and not at all paying any heed to the overall, how should we say, fertility. These are tragedies that are, we are creating disasters. So that elder man was obviously pointing out something really important, and the guardianship, the stewardship, the kaitiangatanga, the tragedy of the commons, all these ways of talking about a very important issue of relationship with our land, but also we're doing that with people. People are being wrung out, and they're starting in the schools, they're squeezing the kids, and it's just, anyway, back to you, Vinny.
Well, I think it was just as we were passing Aotearoa, I turned to this Māori chief and I go, "Hey, what does the Māori chief hang his cloak on?" He goes, "What, bro?" And I go, "A Aotearoa."
Oh. Oh, you're good at your puns.
Yeah,
Your puns are fun.
Oh, we had good laughs, man, and that was what was interesting about hanging out with all the Māori elders and kaumata and stuff like that, is that I'd be making jokes and they'd be laughing, and they'd be like, "Oh, this guy," it's actually like a real good fun, and that was the thing that kind of clicked me on to the fact is that there are two types of people, and it doesn't matter what your race is, what your creed is, or anything like that. You either believe in freedom and honesty and the ability to speak without aggression, or you do not.
Yeah, well, the whole point of this nation is we're all one people. That was established well at the beginning. That was the whole intention, and there's been so much intermarriage and connection between the original, Polynesian and Maori inhabitants and the newcomers and so on, that we were no one's a newcomer anymore and no one's old. We're all blended. And then this wonderful Marxist idea discovered by a female prime minister who I can't name, I just keep forgetting her name, who was a Marxist person who never ever disclosed her Marxism, found out that you could create sectional interest and divide people against each other and create conflicts. And from that you could exploit it politically. So all that natural freedom and happiness and jokes and everything, they tried to use the media to create these divisions and amplify, and the discovery of multiculturalism. Wow, now we can fragment them to even smaller numbers and we can have even more fights and disruptions. And this is very interesting to watch them do this nasty, nasty game. And the Prime Minister, who I can't mention, who figured out how to use sectional interest and break things into small groups and exploit that and then create this illusion that she was somehow over the top of it all and keeping it all, under control. And now her little protege is doing the same. It's amazing. And yet, as soon as you and I get together with other fellas, and start talking, and our wives or sisters start to relate on the natural Kiwi way of being, and Billy TK's doing this. That's the whole direct democracy and People's Party, the public party, and all this feeling. That's what it's about, man. That's how it works, and that's why we can't be stopped now. You see, the whole thing's catching fire, and it's spreading.
It's funny.
And people are catching on. Yes, Vinny. What's that?
Just a few weeks before I got Billy on the show, and they hired me to help the party out and stuff like that, I came across two realizations. Number one, that if you want to roll back this country and actually give it back to the people, it's going to take the involvement of Māori, right? And the second part of it was that that's almost impossible because there is no Billy T. James anymore and there is no Bob Marley anymore. And then a guy named Billy T. K. it just comes out of nowhere. And I was just like, what? I guess that was what I was asking for.
Yeah, and let's hope that look, we can't put everything on his shoulders because we don't need anybody pushed into the Messiah role or
You're
anything.
right.
What we've got to
Absolutely.
do is start duplicating and spreading this out, and it's already there. I can see other things rising up. I've actually met Brian Tamaki at one of Billy's events and his wife Hannah, and I'm seeing that they have spent years raising up and teaching a whole generation of young people. And that spreads like ripples through communities, that kind of positivity. And we saw it run 70 years ago with the Ratana movement. And I think what we're going to see now, Vinny, is ripples go out from centres of positivity and spark with people who, in their own ways, are just waiting to receive some sort of support. And I think we're going to see, coming out of the woodwork, as they say, a whole lot of young, positive people. This morning I had a call on my phone from a young man down at Pookie. And he was just spontaneously calling me, and Chris, what am I going to do? Blah, blah, you got to get with Billy T. I said, oh, okay, yeah, all right, I'll follow your instructions. By the way, would you like to work with him down in Pookie in your area? Oh, heck yeah. I've got to think about it. I said, well, don't think too hard. It's a commitment, but it's not like a marriage. You just got to get on with the project. And, you'll be able to grow into it. It's you'll be all right. And we'll help him. And I think Billy is, we're going to attract through that whole front end that he's opened up. Remember, he's like an icebreaker. Once the icebreaker breaks the ice, and the season's right, it frees the water up. And we're going to see, Vinny, quite a few more young men and women who've got that heart and that hope and that desire. And the older ones of us are just going to have to give them a little bit of shelter and a bit of advice and help as they start to come up. And I think the thing's already well aflame. There's been so much oppression on the New Zealand people from every quarter. this rotten racial separatism stinks. And the the whole thing of the dividing the sexes, this miserable, miserable feminine separatist, horrible. And then this Marxist supremacy. And then you've got the sad and tragic disease of Islam, political Islam, brought into New Zealand from overseas with all that baggage. And all these sad and tragic things that they want to inflict on the happy, freedom-loving Kiwis. We can start to get to grips with this stuff and start to flush it out and clean up the whole show and give everybody a positive vision, because this land is built on positivity. The very beginnings of the nation, you know, if you go back to 1840, was an extremely interesting and very positive message. And everybody who was involved, man, they had free speech. You see those, what those chiefs were saying, you know, they said some amazing, challenging statements, because they fully realized that they were going into a whole new era and they were prepared to take it on. But my goodness, they weren't going to do it except by a direct challenge. And the people they challenged, they took it well. They took it with a broad mind, a broad heart, and an embrace. And they walked together forward. And that is the most amazing thing. This land wasn't born out of a bloody revolution. It was born out of a cooperative effort of two peoples, but then they moved beyond that into a greater stage.
I know, which was called the New Zealand Land Wars after the treaty. Now,
those
I'm just
those
joking.
I think were hangovers from previous situations and challenges and testing. You're always going to have that. From a Marxist perspective, yes, but from the true historical perspective, because I've given up on Marxism. I was a Marxist from age 19 to 22. And that was a wonderful time, and I understood it completely. I used to get big marks on sociology for my marks. And since then, the rest of my life, I've been recovering. So I don't any longer believe in the Marxist narrative that these wars were wars. They were actually struggles from petty chiefs and small people left trying to sort their differences out as the whole thing moved forward. You've got to grow up. Remember, Vinny, give up your old game, your video game. In those days, it wasn't video games. It was eating each other, man. It was harsh stuff. It was harsh.
Yeah,
and it wasn't nice.
Also, you get called a racist if you state historical examples like that. Cannibalism existed before the British got here. After the British took over, it didn't exist.
Correct. It was on the menu, man. There was all kinds of recipes. It was a damn good thing they didn't have garlic. Now, that's a joke. Now, let's get down to this whole word racist. Now, this is the most amazing word because it's an absolutely meaningless word. The people who use it couldn't even tell you what a race is, or an ethnicity, or a culture, or an ethne, you know, or a historical group. The users of that word, look at them and see how the fingers are pointing back at their stupidity, ignorance, and basically Marxist manipulation of an opportunity because they can't address the facts. They don't like to face the fact that they don't know what they're talking about. So that's the cheapest, lowest blow you can get. And people who go, I'm not a racist. Oh, no. Well, just get over it, you know. Everybody's got some sort of ethnicity.
Well, I came up with a response, all right? This is what I want to do, is come up with weaponized responses to very general critiques that you will often find in politics and something like that. So if somebody calls you a racist, you go, okay, yeah, I absolutely am. Nah, I'm not actually. Here's the reason why. Because there's only one race. It's called the human race. If you don't think so, it's because you're racist, okay?
There you go. Beautiful, Vinny. Same with this whole gender bullshit. Actually, all there is sex. There's male and female sex. That's it. Bang, bang. DNA. Oh, we got that figured out. If you don't know that, you can actually go to the pictorial images and figure out yourself. That other part, there are pictures.
Yeah.
And the so-called gender thing is basically variations of people's erotic behavior, most of which is culturally learned. And you have to go to certain nightclubs and strange places to learn certain kinds of strange behaviors. So you were born with your sex, and whatever you do with that gift and how you use it positively or negatively reflects on you. And some people, unfortunately, have to have catamites around them and all kinds of other things, and you can look that word up in the dictionary, and live strangely. And it's a bit like we talked about those people that used to eat each other before they got brought into another level of living. Well, some people are still doing that spiritually to each other, eating up and devouring each other's character and decency. You know, it's horrible. Anyway, on to you, Vinny. What's next?
You talked about a ripple effect, and this is something a great activist, Penny Bright, who I run the Honouring Penny Bright page for, she said that every time she went out there and had her big banners and things of that nature, there will be a ripple effect. There will be, you know, and I think that now, only now, years after her death, am I actually starting to see the wisdom in her words? Because now that ripple effect is starting to become waves.
Yeah,
right?
There's been other good people as Penny, Bruce, Jessen, some really, noble people over the years who've done their very, very best. And there's been a steady, hardcore bunch of people supporting direct democracy. People like John Eisen and Steve Bannon and Amy Brooke and Lou Hiller. There's a whole bunch of them. Steve Evans out at Tauranga. There's a whole bunch of these old faithful. Don McKenzie. There's a bunch of these guys who've been holding the faith for years, and then this suddenly comes back, and people like Billy are saying again, throwing it in the conversation. Let's get this up the front and let's talk about it. Let's get back to business. The ripples that Penny and these other good folks have these little things that they did. Actually built a foundation. Many bricks built the foundation. And it's coming now to the point where it's starting to rise above the surface. A bit like that, the old iceberg effect. You say there's a whole lot under the water. And then
if I may, I had a conversation with Cliff High from the WebBot program many years ago on this show. And I said to him that humanity's spirit is kind of like a spring. You hold it down, but as soon as you've got it all the way down, you have to keep holding it, and it's got a lot of pressure there.
Yeah.
And he said, no, use an organic example.
Right.
Humanity is like a water spring. What happens when you try to plug up a water spring? It starts burrowing sideways through rocks. It finds the weaknesses, it cracks it apart, and then it bursts through the surface in completely unpredictable places. That is humanity's spirit. That is the ripple effect.
Vinny, I think you're a poet. I think you're a muso, aren't you, too? That explains. Yeah, you can see that. That's a powerful image, and that's actually how it works. And the water wizard, his name is Victor Schauberger, and he explained how these springs work, and you're onto it. So the amazing thing is about the lies and deceits of these people who would take the position of an enemy of mankind. Eventually, the whole thing falls apart because it's based on lies for a start. Marx's theory is a lie. His theory is based entirely on conflict. Springs don't work through conflict. Springs work through the natural flow of energy, which has to rise to through the surface and flow because it's part of a greater cycle. And that's how nature works. And humans go through the life cycle as well. And you, Vinny, are entering the life cycle of a new dad. And unlike your bandmates, who they'll never let you change their diapers, your daughter will for a short time. And then she'll take control of her own self. But that phase of growing, of trust and sharing, that's integral. That's cooperation. That's not conflict. These rotten Marxist fiends with their cultural Marx and their political correctness and all this other crap they want to do on us, they're living entirely in a dream of this conflict model, and they believe it like a horrible satanic religion. And the truth rises up eventually because the people have been pushed around for so long, they've had enough. From the Marais over there, to the little businesses over here, to the little social groups over here, even the cracks that are coming through the facade of the blooming global warming racket. This guy who used to be a major proponent of the global warming, his name is Michael Schellenberg. He just came out of the closet, you might say. I'm coming out of the closet, as saying, sorry, everybody, I was misleading you about this climate change business. He said, of course the climate changes, but this whole politicizing of it has been based on lies. He said, I figured it out. I've been in the game for 30 years, and I started to figure out a few years ago, and it's taken me a few more years to get enough guts to tell you the truth. But Vinny, you and I and our friends already knew it. We figured it out too. But now their prophets are coming across and saying, you talk about these people coming out of the closet being gay or something. For goodness sake, get over that. These guys are coming out of the closet about this climate bullshit. And wait till that one cracks, because as that falls down, so does this extreme politicizing of the Wuhan flu, the Kung flu, the CCP flu, the COVID-19, whatever you want to call it. There's so many families of coronavirus and so many flus around and whatever. But the responses, the political responses to it by the, shall we call them the tyrants, it just show how desperate they are to control us. But they can't control nature and they can't control human nature. Neither can you and I. That's just going to change anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like they don't know what they're talking about, and anybody else who disagrees with them, they start accusing them of certain things. I recall being at a, what was it, Socialist Aotearoa meeting over a decade ago. And after the meeting was over and everything, this lady came up to me and she says, "Oh, you're a climate denier." And I go, "No, I never denied there was a climate." And she go, yeah, but you deny climate change is happening. I go, "No, it's been happening for 4 billion years."
Oh, man. And look, we've got some really clever people who are on our side. I won't say any names, but we've met a very interesting man down in Christchurch who's been working on, shall we say, number crunching and data programming for a long time. He's a very healthy, positive, clean living minded man. And he suddenly said, hey, look at the figures. If you work the figures and all the people are putting them together, the people can actually make out, it's called the wisdom of crowds. He said they can figure it out themselves. We can actually work through the data and get to the point. And that is interesting, isn't it? The wisdom of the crowd, the people collaborating together. And that's where Billy's so good. He can get them into the room and get everybody talking. And afterwards they stand around and buzz because they're sharing their talk. And they're expressing that freedom. And it certainly does transform people's lives, being able to say to each other what they think. Because then you can figure out who's the idiot in the room and help him. Hey, have another cup of tea. Just relax a little bit. Listen. Oh, why don't you come and listen to so-and-so? Because the conflict model doesn't work. The conflict model is based on total lies and resentment, jealousy, denial, envy, and straight out bullying, miserable, selfish, won't share their thoughts.
You just listed the exact list from a video I watched before, and it said things that emotionally mature people don't do. And you just listed all those things.
Well, if you have kids, I guess they kick the shit out of you, and they kick you around a bit, and they make you think about certain things, and you do grow into a more mature way. But of course, they're still immature, and they've got to do their maturing in their own way, and that's part of the process of life. You need a bit of, the boulders tumble down the river and they knock each other around a bit.
Yeah.
That's not conflict. That's necessary, challenging, and necessary overcoming, of shall we say, obstacles and blockages. But in the process, the whole system works. So yeah, Vinny, I mean, this is it. We're dealing with, unfortunately, a lot of these characters who would think they would rule over us are psychopathic types. So, Lord Acton's thing about absolute power, yeah, that's true, but really what you've got to look at is who's attracted to that. Who's attracted to that?
If I may, a lot of people misquote Lord Acton. He actually had 3 parts to that quote. The first 2 parts people know. Absolute power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely, but they miss out the 3rd part. All great men are inherently evil.
All great men.
All great men are inherently evil. That's the actual 3rd part of that Lord Acton quote. Great men don't like hearing that because it means that they have evil within themselves that they need to restrain and chain up and that kind of thing and balance the shadow self. And a lot of people don't do that. And I recall the elders I was talking about, about the cows and what have you down at the Temple of the Four Winds. And they also told to me that the reason why they're doing their activism isn't for their kids. And it's not for their kids either. It's actually for the generations that are yet to be born, because the generations that are yet to be born have absolutely no choice in what is happening on today. Only we have that choice, and because we are the only ones with that choice, we are the only ones with an obligation.
Well said. And I think that's a very healthy outlook. And I just wanted to bring that round a little bit because Lord Acton needed to include women. in his statement. You just said great men, but actually women who would pretend to be great would have even worse problem, because they would, in their attempts to be great, would have to dominate men and crush little boys and all that. And it just gets more and more sinister. So what you're talking about is, what is the nature of an evil being, of a evil human? How does that manifest, and how does that work? I would like to discuss that another time, because I think this discussion is really about the public party, New Zealand Public Party, and direct democracy, and how we can help the nation itself. And overcoming evil is an integral part of building the nations forward. But that has to start within the family and within the soul of each father and mother, and how they raise their children. Because in my humble opinion, and I won't go too far, but evil is transmitted through culture. It comes in through that door, and it's a subtle process. And we have to learn how to make our cultures more positive, healthy, and life-affirming, and truthful, and loving in that way. Truth, love, and life. And again, Billy has a deep faith that he says openly, but every decent person has something of a deep faith and belief, whether it be in a God, or in the decency of the potential decency of a human being, or in how we can make a better world if we all work together, whatever. That's different ways of saying very similar things. And this whole movement is touching so many people, I can see. And it's not restricted just to the public party, but that represents the groundswelling moving. And it's a really healthy thing. It shows you that the New Zealand spirit is still free. And, in my opinion, Vinny, there's 3 free nation groups in the Anglo-Western society. The Kiwis, the Queenslanders, and you want to guess what the third one is? The Texans.
The Texans, yeah. I was about to say it had to be somebody from America.
It's us, the bloody Aussies, and the Texans. Those are the 3 free spirit brothers and sisters, really the freest of the free. And they're the ones that I think have the greatest opportunity to lead the others forward, to break out of this terrible historical conundrum that many people are in. And then as we liberate, we can start to liberate the others that are stuck deeper in the ruts. The poor, miserable Sharia compliant sods, and all the other ones who want tribalism to beat everyone on the head with a stick, and other ones who want to use the CCP to run their rackets, their gangster rackets. On and on it goes. But you see, something healthy comes up, and you're gonna watch the knockers come out, mate. You're gonna watch all this opposition. It's going to be very interesting.
Oh, it's already started to come out, even from the minor parties. And I want to thank you for your time today, mate. But we didn't really get too much of a discussion about direct democracy going. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, that's my fault. I'm a terrible talk radio show host. I don't keep people on point. I just randomly interject things that are interesting. Like Fantasia, for example. Wolfgang Petersen film. A lot of people have seen Fantasia. They don't know what it means. What was the nothing, ladies and gentlemen, that was wiping away the world? It was the emptiness that was left when you took away people's hope. And the reason why the creature of darkness, Gamork, was helping the nothing is because people who don't have any hope are easy to control. And I believe that Billy's giving even me, a jaded journalist, like just there's this little sputtering flame of hope. I've almost not felt it for a long time, and it's invigorating, that kind of thing. And just to explain a little bit, ladies and gentlemen, when we're dealing with this element here, infiltration, things of that nature, there is an ex-spy trainer in the leadership roles of the National Party. Okay, the media knows this. Okay, they've called him out on it many times. He says, yes, I trained Chinese spies, but I myself am not a spy. I mean, so what if I'm in head of a foreign government or something like that? It's just, this is how it works, ladies and gentlemen. The People's Liberation Army and the triads, that is the intelligence world and the organised crime world, did a deal. They say, hey, we've got huge amounts of drug money that we need to launder, and you've got heaps of other countries that you want to conquer. Why don't we work together? And they go, well, how do we do that? Well, we're going to bribe a whole bunch of people at Hong Kong and New Zealand and all other places to get us passports, good passports. And then we're going to send our agents into your country loaded with huge amounts of clean drug money. And then they're going to buy your homes. They're going to buy your businesses. They're not going to change the name of the business. They're going to keep running it as per usual. They're going to have their children. They're going to make sure those children study really hard. They're going to send them to university and ensure that they study really hard so that they get the top grades. And once they then graduate from the university, they will then instruct their children to get government jobs. So at any point when you want, say, for example, some substandard Chinese steel on a freeway or something to be approved, you know, you can do that because you've managed to infiltrate the entirety of the bureaucracy. Now, this is basically a short form version of what can be found in Ian Wishart's book Totalitaria, which I did, in fact, narrate the first few chapters on, ladies and gentlemen. So you can search Totalitaria on this channel and have a look at the Secret War for Control chapter. Very, very interesting 15 minutes of your life. And last thing was just a little bit of humour there. Mosquito cops. All right, just think about that, you know, guys cruising down the road or something like that. All of a sudden, you know, his phone rings. He's just like talking to his missus and stuff, and behind him he hears this. He goes, "Oh, baby, I'm being called over by the mosquito cops," and he pulls over, and this big 6-foot mosquito gets out of the cruiser wearing a big stab-proof vest. Comes up to him and he goes, "Any idea how fast you'll go, mate?" And he well, no, I don't really. And I go, "Well, we're just conducting some random alcohol check." Hey! I just thought it'd be a really funny skit to combine the two most annoying things in the world together: mosquitoes and police. I hope that brightens your day, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for listening to the Vinny Eastwood Show. All right, thank you very much to my very special guest, Chris Newman. DirectDemocracy.nz is his website there, and also thank you very much to the New Zealand Public Party. It is time to take back New Zealand for the people. And lastly, as well, there have been amazing comments in the chat rooms. All the moderators have been very, very busy here. Jimmy James, thank you very much. He's reminding people that you could consider donating through PayPal, GorillaMedia77@gmail.com, and to hit the like button, folks, if you can. Now, there are two versions of this video being streamed as we speak here on YouTube, the main channel and the backup channel as well. So thank you very much to all the mods on the Fence with Muzza, Dilip Funbar, Richard Bonner, and all the rest of you supporters. By the way, Richard, thank you so much for your monthly cash letters. They are absolutely fantastic, and $300 a month makes a huge amount of difference in my household. So, ladies and gentlemen, bear in mind that this show has been around for over a decade, telling the truth, not betraying those who serve the cause of liberty. And the reason why I'm able to do that is because of you. You gave me money. You liked the channel. You shared the videos. You subscribed. You started up an automatic payment of $1 a week into the Vinny Eastwood Show account. Links in the description and everything. This show exists because I do it, and you support it, ladies and gentlemen. It is a symbiotic relationship. And if, ladies and gentlemen, I ever do completely sell out, stop telling the truth, go start working for mainstream media or something like that, that's not me anymore. I've been compromised, and I need you to destroy me so that I can't use these talents to destroy you and this country and the world. I don't want to contribute to anything like that. So that's the bond of trust that we have established, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm extraordinarily grateful for all of your support. Even today, ladies and gentlemen, we had nearly $1,200 be paid through patreon.com/Vinny Eastwood for the monthly contributions that you've paid us, ladies and gentlemen. That is going to pay my internet bill, that is going to pay my power bill, that is going to pay my phone bill, but not all that much else. So we've got to hopefully double that amount next month if we can, ladies and gentlemen. So go to patreon.com/Vinny Eastwood. That's Vinny with a Y because it's the most important question. And Eastwood, like, go ahead, make my news. Links are in the description. PayPal buttons are on the homepage of the VinnyEastwoodShow.com. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening to the Vinny Eastwood Show, the lighter side of genocide. Just because we're being exterminated doesn't mean we can't make it fun. Otherwise, what's the point of being killed? The Vinny Eastwood Show, where the only thing worse than living in a high-tech global police state is Vinny's jokes.